Hello all. So we were doing the portfolio task at that day, right? This is where we left it. So we were facing some issue back then when we were trying. So where you can find it, you can go to the repository I shared with you. And if you go inside this live demos folder, you can see the portfolio folder where we have the index.html and index.css. So this is where we'll be working on. Let's keep inside by side. So I've already opened it in my localhost. Yeah. So certainly there is something going on wrong here. I just had a look what was going on wrong. So this is spanning according to our wish, but this is not spanning as expected. So if I go back, let's try to quickly recap what we have here. So we just have the HTML container, and inside we have the body tag. Okay, inside we have added one div container to contain all the small containers we have here. Okay, let me open the inspo that I have taken, inspo layout. I think this. So this is the layout that we're trying to recreate at that day. So if you see this first container, second container, third, fourth, fifth, and so on, all these will be placing in one container. Why do we need an extra div when we have a body tag that wraps around uh, all the small containers we have? You can do that as well, but for the sake of customization, just in case if we want to add any extra tags, any extra containers going down the layout, that will be easy if we wrap the containers we have in a div. So that is why we did this. Okay. We have given them an ID container. Let's also parallelly see what styles we have added. Okay. So this styling we have added to remove all the default behavior of the browser. Okay. This we have discussed in one session, but you can always go search online if you miss something or couldn't understand something. And then what have we applied here on the body tag? So I have given it a certain width and height. So to center my div, this is the div, right? Center my div accordingly to the center. So in order to center something, we have to give it a certain width and certain height so that it takes the width and height and try to center the element inside the container according to the height and width we have made. For suppose if I have given 40 rem and 40 width, it will center within that height and width. So I have given height and width, and I have given display flex and align item center, justify content center. So these three single properties alone we use in order to center an element in CSS. So this is one way of doing it. Previously, we do it and it's a bit more complex, but this one it will be fairly easy. But these three properties to be working, you have to define a certain width and certain height for that container. So you can remember this. Okay. It's center the element inside the container. Okay. Now on that day, if you see, so if you see, we have given margin for the body. What do we mean by margin? Margin is outside the container and inside the outer border. So let's go back to the screen. So this edge is there, right? At the edge of the screen, this is the outer border, and the inner border will be just around the container we have. Margin, it goes above the container. So whatever the width and height of the container we have, it goes above the, see, it goes above the container, not inside the container. So if it goes above the container, it will add extra height and extra width for the container we already have. That is not equal to the browser width and browser height. So in that case, we'll be having these awful scroll bars on the X side and the Y side. So we don't want that. We want our so yeah, we want our app to be looking neat. So if in case somehow we should be having these scroll bars in our application, we can also make them hide with certain properties. But in this case, we don't really need these scroll bars. It's not adding any functionality to our application. So what I can do is, we know this margin is the culprit. So instead of giving margin, I will give the padding. Let's see what happens. Okay. Okay, then if you see, we could not see the scroll bars, right? So now it's looking a bit more put together. Okay, so that is that. So default, and why do we use this root function? So to declare the constants of whatever the text sizes, padding sizes, or colors that you will be using all across the application, that you can declare here. Why do we need that? So if it is a small application, then we don't need to worry about writing the same color everywhere. But if it is a large application, we might lose track of the colors, the constant colors that we need to be applying, the constant border radius we need to be applying. So there will be inconsistencies when we are doing that, when we are trying to keep track of all the properties all the properties all across application. So that is why if we at the time of the designing itself, when we receive the design, we will get all the primary, secondary colors, and what are the border radius should be. Border radius should be consistent across the application. If it is not consistent, it will be looking not good, inconsistent. Uh, for suppose if you have given 0 border radius somewhere else and 2 pixels of border radius somewhere else, if it is required, then it is good. But if it's not, then it will not be looking inconsistent. That is not what we want. So declaring all the properties, all the primary, secondary colors, all the text sizes and text font styles here will enable you to use them consistently across the application. So that's why we do it. And we have discussed this body style, right? Then what we have? We have the container. What is the container? Container is to contain all the small boxes that will be coming inside them. So I have done what styling I have added on that. Okay, so we have given it a display grid. Why? If you see the layout, we can imagine a grid here. It is not a one-dimensional layout. It is two-dimensional layout. We can see columns. We can assume that these containers we have here, those are nothing but cells, but more than one cells. Here, if you see the first container, we are trying to merge 2 columns and 2 rows. If we merge that, it is the box. Okay. In this, if we see, it is nothing but 2 columns merged. In this box, it is 2 columns and 2 rows merged. This one, it might be 2 rows merged, and this one, it is a single column and single row. That is how we can see this layout, right? So, okay. So, if we go back, so that is why I have used display grid, because it will be easy to handle the positioning of the elements on the screen with grid. Why can't we use flex here? Flex, as we discussed, it is mostly for the one-dimensional elements, arranging one-dimensional elements on the screen. But clearly, we can see that we're having two-dimensional layout here. So that is why we're using grid. Okay, and then I want to show you this one cheat sheet we have, grid cheat sheet. I will share this link with you in the chat. Okay, you can go through it and keep it aside when you're trying to understand and work with grid. It helps you use the right properties. When you use the right properties again and again, then you can remember them while actually trying to. You can remember them going forward. Okay, so this is where we start. Let's quickly go through these properties. Okay, before going back. I know I'm going back and forth, but just so. This is where we start. This is only the property that we're going to talk about, display grid. Okay, display grid, and what we have inside, quickly, what we have inside, grid template. This is one property. What does it do? What it does is, it defines how many columns we want and how many rows we want of which width, of what width. So if you see here, grid template columns, 12 pixels, 12 pixels, and 12 pixels. So he wants 3 columns. That is why he defined 3 elements there, 3 values there, and he have given 12 pixels of the cell size. Okay, so he wants each cell of the grid to be 12 pixels. That is why we have given it. So how many rows he want? He want 12 pixels, 12 pixels, 12 pixels. So 3 rows will be there, and in 3 rows each cell will be of 12 pixels. Okay, this is what I'm trying to do at that day. So if we're doing 12, 12, 12, we can use a function in CSS called repeat. Okay, what does it do? It takes 2 params and repeats the action. Okay, so if you see, instead of writing 12 pixels, 12 pixels, 12 pixels, instead of writing 12, 12, 12, what he did, he added this function and said repeat it 3 times, and each cell should be of 12 pixels. Okay. So when it comes to columns, what he did is 3, but instead of just 12 pixels, do the auto. What do we mean by auto? So whatever the width of the container we have, right? It takes whole width of the container and then arranges three elements equally to fill the container. Okay, we'll see it in the by default it will be auto only. If we don't give any values, it will take the width of the container and try to fill it with all the elements, with the number of elements we have. Okay, so you can see here. So here, if I zoom out, sorry, zoom in. Grid template columns. He wants the first column to be 8 pixels. Okay, 8 pixels, and he wants the last column to be 8 pixels, 8 pixels, and he haven't given any uh, size for the middle column. So he just added auto. What does that? What it is doing? It is taking all the width that is between these two cells and it is giving the width of the remaining container and giving it to the middle cell. So if you see in the columns also, rows also, the first row he wants it 8 pixels, the last row he wants it 12 pixels, but in the middle row he did auto. So whatever the width that is left in between these two rows will be given to that particular cell. Okay. So you can also play around with the units here. We have several units. Okay, pixels, percentage, fractions, short for FR, and auto, this repeat function. So when you do this mix and match, then you can understand what is actually going on. So what is grid gap? We have gap property in Flex. What it does, it defines the gap between the elements of the Flex container. Here it defines the gap between the columns and rows of that is nothing but elements of the grid. Okay, so we have the grid row gap and grid column gap. So row gap is when we declare the gap between the rows, and column gap will be it defines the gap between the columns. Now we also have a shorthand notation where we can define both of them like this. Okay. Instead of that, we can just do grid gap and one value. It will take same value for grid row gap and grid column gap. Okay. And then if we go down, we have the justify items. How do we want the whole items of the grid to be aligned on the screen? So in the Flex also we have seen align start, align end, and align center, right? So justify item start, it will align the items to the start of the container, and it does what it does, it aligns to the center of the container. This is when you have given a certain size for the row and column. Okay, and then you have space remaining so that you can see actually visualize what's going on the screen. But if everything is auto, if everything is filled up in the grid, then you can't really see what is happening, but you can still align. Yes, sorry for that. And going back. Okay, going back, this is how we do it, just to align the items, and you also use align items to position the elements. It justifies all the grid content on row axis when total grid size is smaller than the container. Yeah, so all this alignment, justifying all this we have, right? That is, you actually can visualize when you have the cell sizes, column sizes, and row sizes, or overall the grid size that is lesser than the container size we have. Then we can actually see the grid moving all around the layout. This also you can refer. And align content also, it aligns the whole content of the grid vertically. Grid auto flow. This is also one important property. Let's suppose say you have a dynamic layout where you keep on adding the cards to your layout. Then you will not be knowing how many cards that will be there on your screen. So whenever some action happens, you're adding a new card. So you cannot really decide how many cards will be there, how I want them to be, and all, right? So what you can do in that situation is you can use this property where you will define the size. You will display type as a grid, and then you will define grid column and grid row sizes, and then you do this grid auto flow. Then what it will do, it will arrange the upcoming cards or upcoming grid cells. Rest of the properties we have a lot of them, so I want you to go through them, but this one right here, at that day, this is what we are trying to do: grid column start and grid column end, and a grid row start and grid row end. Okay, this is what we are trying to do in order to position the elements in the number of cells and number of columns we want. Okay, so what it is doing. Okay, let's go here. We have this one article where it shows how to debug the grid layouts Okay, how to debug the grid layouts. So how do we do it? I will share this one also with you. How can we do it? When we define a container with a display grid, we can see that in the DevTools. Okay, where we have defined our grid. So this is the body, and inside if you go, you can see grid here. Uh, Grid notation here. I'll go to layout here, and then I'll extend grid lines. Then I can see the grid lines. Okay. So if you see, a cell is nothing but, you can see the numbers here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. These we call the grid lines. So this, if I want it, my container, my element to be spanning only one cell, how can I declare? Grid column start 1, grid column end 2. But here we want them to be spanning until here, right? So what we did was grid column start 1 and grid column end 3. So same for the rows. If we want it to be starting from the first column, then you first row, then you will be giving grid row start 1, grid row end 3. So we will give the number of the grid, grid line number instead of the row number. So this is row 1, this is row 2. So grid line is nothing but row plus 1, the column plus 1. Okay. So we also have a shorthand notation for these two. Okay, that you can refer. Same for the grid row. We can also do grid row plus grid column. I'll share the link with you. We can go through. So let's just go back to our VS Code and go back to our analysis again. So what are we doing here? So at that day, what went wrong is, so if you go inside this one, we have defined a container for every element that we have. Okay, and we have given an ID for each of the container. Why are we giving ID? Because the styling that we're going to use for this particular container, we use it for this only, this and this only. So it is unique. So that is why I'll rather use ID instead of class selector to select the element. Okay. So in here also you can see all of the IDs that we have given for the containers. Okay. So where it was going wrong at that time, intro is fine. About is where it is not showing as expected. So if I open this here, instead of here, if you see, we have used grid column start and grid column end properties in order to adjust. But here, if you see, we are using grid template columns and grid template rows. This is different properties that we should not be using this in order to achieve what we are desiring. Okay, so that is what it where it went wrong at that time. But it was already at the end of the day that we couldn't figure out. But yeah, later when I see, I have decided that I don't want them to be looking like this. I want them to be equally looking. Why? When I go back here, if you see, we can see this part, this about me part and the intro part, we have the same columns. Here also two columns we can see. So instead of doing 3 fractions, okay, I will do 4 fractions and I will split them equally. 2 fractions for first intro and what else? 2 fractions for the about container. Okay. So I have, let's also come back on this rows, right? We might be needing an extra row or something. So if we do that, we'll come back and add. But for now, we're looking into columns. Okay. So yeah, we want the whole screen to be divided into 4 fractions of equal length, equal size of the content of the cell. And if you see, if you observe grid columns layout, so we want to start from 1 to 3. For about me, where do we want it to be? From 3 to 5. Let's go back and add that. We have the about container. I will copy the same thing and paste here, but I will change the. So wherever we're leaving the first element, I will start from there and give it 5, 3 to 5. And rows also I want it to be in single row. Single row means 1 to 3. So it is coming as the same. Okay. So, but for the about container, how do we want it? We want it to span from 1 to 4. That means, okay. Now you see, right? We might want to add an extra column in order to, extra row in order to achieve what we want. So in this, I want to take, let's comment this for now. This one will move from 1 to 2. Okay. Okay, still not looking as it is expected. How do we do it? Maybe okay, it looks okay. But this one FR fraction unit, what it will do is it will split the container into equal parts. But what if we give a certain width to each column, like columns, right? 8 run, 8. Oh, sorry, 8 run, 8 run, 8 run. With the rows and see. Okay. 2 rem is too much. Let's maybe give 1 rem. Okay, that looks fine to me. And then we'll come back to the content inside the elements. Okay, but so what else we have? We have this projects container right here. That where do we want it to be? We want it to be starting from 2 grid line. If you imagine grid lines, this is 1 grid line, 2 to 3, 4, 2 to 4. Let's try that grid row. I will copy this for. We also have a shorthand notation for all this, but for sake of understanding, let's try to keep it this way for now. Let's collapse this and then. Okay, name container. What is it? Okay, we're working on the projects container. Projects, yes. So inside this, I will paste this, and instead of these values, we know that columns also it is starting from 1 to 3. Why? Because it is taking 2 columns, and but it is starting from 1, 2, 3. It is starting from 3 and then going till 5. Okay, so instead of 1, 3, it is going for 5. Rows we already discussed, right? 1, 2. From 2 it is starting. 3, 4. 2 to 4 will give. Okay, let's see. Okay, it laid on top of it. Let's give a color for this. Let's give it where primary color. Okay. Let's copy this folder IDs. Why it is overlapping with that one? Let's go back to our layout and see. This is 2. At what row our about container is ending? It is ending at 3. So that is where it is going. We should start from 3 and go till 5. Now that looks fine, right? Yes. But let's display the text to be white for now. Here I will include it. Text color white. Do we have it? Oh yeah, we already have it. Let's not do this again and go back here and give color. Okay then, so what else we have here? We have the skill container and experience container. So how do we want them? So for skills, let's assume that it is taking 2 rows, okay, but 1 column. Where it is starting from? From 1 to 2 columns, 1 to 2 rows from where? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So columns from 1 to 2. Let's do that. Let's add that. Skill container. Let's uncomment it and go inside. Instead of white, what is the other color we have? Secondary color, right? Let's give it secondary color. And columns from 1 to 2. Okay. Let's also paste this border radius. Okay. Color, this won't be nice, but let's give it white and see. Okay. We'll keep, okay, see what we're using here. This property, this is not the property that we should be using. Grid template columns that, sorry, grid column start. That is the appropriate property. So what grid template rows and columns do? It defines the size of the cell, okay, not where it want to start, where it want to end. So that is not how it works. So yeah, the column should be starting from 1 and grid column end. It should be ending at 2, I think. Yeah. But for rows, grid template, sorry, see, grid row start from everyone 1, 2, 3, 3 to 5. Grid row end. Okay, it is not 3. It is 4. So yeah, if we want it to span to a row below, we want to add a row below because for now we all we have is 4 rows and 4 columns. If you go back and see at the top, what we have, we only have 4 columns and 4 rows. So let's just try to accommodate all of them inside here only for the sake of ease. Okay, and what else we have? This experience one, this div right here. So let's remove all of them. So if I go inside, instead of white, what shall we give? Okay. Okay. Project 2. Let's copy this one for this and for this one. Okay. Okay, there you have it. Okay, it's somewhat looking nice and right. Something that so the whatever the remaining space as the default value is auto, it is taking the remaining width that is available. So now we can see it is somewhat fine to look at. So let's go ahead. Let's go inside and try to work with the content we have. So let's start with this one. Okay, and what is that intro? Intro. What do we have inside? We have a container, and then we have h1 image. Okay, image. It can be a little bigger. So let's go back and give it like 12 rem and 12 rem. Also, it will be good if it is circular. It's not looking good with the border. So how do we make it circular? Border radius 50%. Property is good. Yeah, now it is good. Also, the alignment of the image, I want it to be in the beginning and not at the end. Somehow it looks good. Okay, why it is aligned like this? Okay, it is the name container, not the intro one. Intro, name container. Okay. So turns out we don't really need this extra container. Yeah, we do. Yes, 1 second. Let's move it outside the image. Then it will be like this. Yes. So if you're a bit confused when I'm trying to move around these divs and all, later we complete this, you can go ahead and have a look in the GitHub repository. Okay. So in the intro itself, I will select, notice that intro, inside name container, I will select the H1. Let's change the font size of it to Orion something. Let's see if it applies. It applies, yes. And this font family also not looking good. Something. This is a bit looking fine. Let's keep it that way for now. Okay, and instead of Orion, let's do it. Okay, that is fine. And inside the name container itself, that is name container itself, I will select P and give it a font size. We'll also make it bold. Okay, it will be already bold, but name should be highlighted, right? And for this, I will give something like Turan. Okay. So for the name container, do we have any styling for it? No. For the name container itself, I want them display flex, justify content to left, align items, start. How does that start? How does that look? Okay. Justify flex direction. Some changing everything. Okay, we can ignore this. So it looks somewhat readable and neat to me. And then we can go ahead with the about container. Okay, in about container we have a H3. Let's make it H2. How does that look? Okay, let's give it H1. And inside the about, I will select the P tag, and then I'll give it font size of 1.2 rem maybe. And then I will also select. So these are the only span tags we have inside about, right? So it is fine to select like them, like this, about and span. And how I want them to be. I also want them to be having font size like 1 rem. Okay. So if you see they're sticking to the edges of the container, we might need to give some padding on the container. What is the container we have? This is about. We'll go here and give some padding. Padding of 0.8 rem. Looks fine, but why is this having this much space? Can go and inspect on the same. So the padding is same, but the alignment of the text is weird. Okay. Okay, let's try it. Text align. Okay, now it looks good. Okay, then the font size needs to be a little bit. Okay, let's also give this like a 1.4. Okay, but I want the div is about container to have some gap between the elements. Let's give it like 0.5 rem. Okay, that looks fine, but I cannot differentiate this text with this. Let's try to style the span. We saved all of them inside the div, right? Let's try to select that div from about and div and I will give display flex so that I can, okay, and I'll also give them gap of 0.4, okay, 0.7, right? Okay, that looks fine. What I'll go do is I'll add subtle shadow, slightly lighter background color. So I will grab whatever the color we have here. I will copy this one here and go inside. I'll just grab a slightly, yeah, like that. But then we want to have some padding for each element. Padding of, no, that's it. Yeah, that's fine. Let's the border radius, of like 4 pixels. Okay, uh, maybe, okay, that's fine. That's fine for now. Okay. Okay, let's go to the skills container now. Let's collapse all this. Skills container. If I open it, what we have here? We have these. This is the skills container here. So I'll try to select a, let's make it the H1, right? Same as the other one. And also I will, inside the skills container, right? I will give the display flex, display content center, align items center vertically, and then flex direction to be column. That looks fine. So the skills itself looks fine, but the span text here, right, needs a bit of styling. We can add the same kind of styling that we have for above these spans, right? We'll just copy and then paste here, but instead of above, we will select skills one and skills. Okay, fine. Let's see what's happening. Okay, it's like this. Mm, you can reduce the gap and also reduce the padding. Yeah, see, going forward, if we increase the row size for the skills container, then these all will be fitting. Now, let's do the same with projects and experience container. I will copy the same, paste here. It is centered. Now, what I want to do is I'll make it H1. And then this span tags we have, right? And let's select them. Experience. I'll give it a font size of 1.2. Okay, that is fine. Oh, that's fine for now. And then let's go back to projects. Where do we have that? Here. So for projects also, we have this display flex, extend path, center, align items, center. Okay. We don't need this data. That is not specific. Okay. So for this one also, let's keep it H1 and and then for this text, let's keep the size of this one. Okay. So projects, there will be more projects, right, inside this container. So that is why it kept an extra div. So that's fine. When you're trying to add more projects, right, you can keep each of the project in a div and then proceed. Okay. For this one, I'll try to select projects P and then give it font size of what is that, common 1.2. Okay. text align to be centered. Okay. Also, some padding on the content so that it won't stick to the borders. See here what we are missing here. Here we have some padding, but here if you see we're having less padding than that. So we're missing the consistency in the containers like this. So let's go back and see what have we given for the about container. What padding we have given. We have given 1.8. But if you see, if we give the same padding here, yeah, now it is somewhat lookable. It feels pleasant on the eye. So we can go ahead and modify and add some changes here, the text colors, the font sizes. We can add extra elements to the layout. We can increase and decrease the sizes of the layout according to our will. But yeah, that is where we start. I hope you got an understanding and value from this session we have. So going forward, we can also add more elements to the layout. But what I want you to work on after the session is go check out this code in the GitHub, clone it in your local, and then what I want you to do is add media queries on it, make it responsive. So for suppose if I go like this, what it is doing, it is shrinking horizontally. It's not looking nice. This is not how I wanted it to be. Okay, what I wanted to do is add breakpoints for each screen. So breakpoints for mobile, breakpoints for tablets and desktops. Add breakpoints for each of the device, and then arrange these items or change the grid start and grid row, grid column and grid column start and grid column and numbers for these containers. Align them in such a way it looks nice. That is what I will leave you with. Yeah, you can check.